material world. Purport. It is sometimes misunderstood that if one has to associate with persons engaged in devotional service, he will not be able to solve the economic problem. To answer this argument, it is described here that one has to associate with liberated persons not directly, physically, but by understanding, through philosophy and logic, the problems of life. It is stated here, samyag darshanaya buddhya, one has to see perfectly, and by intelligence and yogic practice, one has to renounce this world. That renunciation can be achieved by the process recommended in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The devotee's intelligence is always in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His attitude toward the material existence is one of detachment, for he knows perfectly well that this material world is a creation of illusory energy. Realizing himself to be part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, the devotee discharges his devotional service and is completely aloof from material action and reaction. Thus at the end he gives up his material body, or the material energy, and as pure soul he enters the kingdom of God. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 31st chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Kapila's Instructions on the Movements of the Living Entities. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the result of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, of hearing from the pure devotee. Association with the liberated person. This is the result, that our intelligence is strengthened, that we become endowed with the correct vision, the vision of illusion, the vision of accepting the body as the self, should be decimated by the power of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the saintly person. And then, as we hear in the end of the purport, what is the end result? At the end, then, we're able to give up the material body, all the material energy. That's such I love that wording. Prabhupada says, thus at the end, he gives up his material body, all the material energy. And as pure soul, he enters the kingdom of God. So we give up the material body, but actually we're giving up the entire material energy. We're saying goodbye to the material energy. And then as pure soul, we can enter into the kingdom of God. So this is the result of the practice of devotional service. This is the result that and this has been such an amazing chapter. Lord Kapila Dev has explained so many things in this chapter. He explains the bondage of the living entity within the womb, how the soul, the fortunate soul within the womb is praying to the Lord, please don't allow me to be overcome by Maya. And then when the little person within the womb comes out, is enveloped by Maya. And then the whole process of how Maya takes hold of the living entity. And the main way that the Maya takes hold of the living entity is from attraction between male and female. We've been through that section in this chapter. And then we hear about the whole process of death and how death should not be viewed as horrific. Death is simply a change in situation for the living entity. And then on today's verse, finishing off the chapter, when we are endowed with right vision. So this is, as we say in our prayers to the spiritual master, Chakshu, we want to see through the eyes of Shastra, we want to see through the explanation that the spiritual master and the pure devotees give. We want our intelligence to become purified. We want them to be able to ignite our life with that torchlight of knowledge so that we can see properly, so we become endowed with the right vision. Like, if our vision is failing and we need glasses or something, this is our position in the material world, is that our vision is failed. We are identifying with matter. That's why we're here. So then we need to correct our vision. And we correct our vision by hearing, actually. We correct our vision by hearing from the pure devotee. And the practical application of what we hear, which is the next part. So endowed with the right vision and strengthened by devotional service. So that's our strength, that's our power, is the whole process of devotional service. Because by that process of devotional service, we gain the realization of the knowledge that the spiritual master and the Shastra gives. So the two must go together. We can't simply sit down and read books. We need the practical application of knowledge through the process of devotional service. That's why it's so hand in hand. That service, when we're serving, when we're attempting to serve Krishna and Krishna's devotees, Krishna becomes pleased. And then, as Srila Prabhupada says, this process that's recommended in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, what is that process? That process is hearing. That process starts with service to the pure devotee. So in the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Divinity and Divine Service, there's those wonderful progression of verses from, I think, about 15 or 16 up until like 25, 27, that describes this process that we develop an urge to hear by service to the devotee. And by rendering of service to the devotee, then great service is done. Yes? And then by that service we gain the affinity for hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. We gain the affinity for hearing about the Supreme Lord. So this is our process. By attempting to serve the devotees, then Krishna in the heart, he becomes pleased with that, because what pleases Krishna the most is when we're serving his devotee. So when Krishna sees, okay, this person is trying to serve, then Krishna within the heart gives us the desire, or starts to clear away our unwanted desires, so that that pure desire to hear about Krishna becomes more prominent. So then within our heart we can feel this desire that we want to hear about Krishna. We gain the affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. And then, when we begin to hear, then the supersoul within the heart becomes more and more active. It starts to cleanse away all those troublesome things in the heart, yes? By when we regularly hear. So when we regularly are serving the devotee Bhagavat and we're hearing from the Srimad Bhagavatam, then all those troublesome things within the heart become cleansed away. And then devotional service becomes established within the heart, yes, as an irrevocable fact. That's that verse, yes. So when devotional service becomes established within the heart, then the devotee becomes situated in pure goodness. And then the modes of material nature are not able to affect the devotee anymore when we are positioned in that way. And then the whole knot of material bondage becomes broken, and we see the self as master. So there's a wonderful progression of verses describing how the whole hearing process works, and it begins with service to the devotee. That's how we gain that eagerness to hear, is when we're serving the devotees. So just as Lord Kapila is explaining today, so endowed with the right vision, that's the first part of the verse, samyak darshanaya buddhya. Yes. So endowed with the right vision, and buddhya, intelligence. Yes. And so our intelligence starts to change. Strengthened by devotional service. Yoga. Yoga, vairagya. Then what happens? Vairagya, detachment. Yes. So then when our vision has changed and we are strongly positioned in devotional service, then naturally we start to feel detachment from what? Detachment from the material energy, detachment from our material identity. And that is what Srila Prabhupada, in the translation, in the next line, so a pessimistic attitude toward material identity. That's what Prabhupada has explained as vairagya. So what a nice, in vairagya word for word, he says detachment. But then in the English translation, he says a pessimistic attitude toward material identity. So that's detachment, actually. Yes, what a great explanation of detachment. One should relegate his body to this illusory energy through reason. So through reason and intelligence, we should then see clearly that our material body is simply part of the material illusory energy. And that me, pure spirit soul, I am aloof from that. And then with that kind of realization, Lord Kapila says, one can be unconcerned with this material world. And then the end result of that is that we're able to give up that material body, we're able to give up the material energy and enter into the kingdom of God. So it's a very nice summary of the whole chapter. Yes, endowed with the right vision. This is what Lord Kapila Dev's given us through the whole chapter. Come on, look at the situation. This is the reality, No roses and, no, it's actually material life means suffering, actually. From within the womb, outside the womb, this whole bondage of attraction and then up to death. Let's get the right vision of this and actually see the reality. So this is such a gift that Shastra gives, that it just knocks our misconceptions away, and then we're able to see with the right vision, we're able to see with intelligence, a bit more sober, because in material life it's like we're taught to be very optimistic about material life. We're taught to be very, we want to get things, we want to think everything's going to be great, we can do it. Nobody wants to be pessimistic in material life. That's seen as a great fault. Oh, you're a pessimist, you're a bit of a downer, not very, you're not much fun. But actually Shastra just gives us the right vision. It takes away those misconceptions from our material conditioning and allows us to see with intelligence, with reason, that actually this is not the situation for the pure spirit soul. This is not a happy situation for the pure spirit soul. And then we can have the right attitude. A pessimistic attitude toward material identity, yes. But an optimistic attitude for our advancement in devotional life. As Rupa Goswami explains, we need confidence, we need determination, we need all of these qualities in our spiritual life. We shouldn't be pessimistic about our opportunities in bhakti yoga. We should be very optimistic about that. But pessimistic in a realistic way about material identity. That our attachment to our material identity is not going to bring us happiness. But our opportunities in bhakti, that's something that brings a lot of optimism, joy. Devotees are happy, As Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, devotional service is joyfully performed. It's not that we go around and we're always like, but devotees are very optimistic in bhakti. It reminds me, my Guru Maharaj tells this pastime. I think he just told it recently, actually, how he was sitting very early on. He had just moved into the temple. He was sitting in front of Srila Prabhupada in a Sunday feast class, and Srila Prabhupada just started roaring very loudly and saying that if you are optimistic about material life, you are an animal. And then, but the next part he says, but in Krishna consciousness, everything is optimistic. So the two sides of the coin is there, and this is the reality that we can embrace. That both sides are there. Yes, the pessimism of the material reality, but the great optimism of spiritual life. They're both there. So we can always be optimistic in spiritual life, but we should have a realistic, and that means a pessimistic view of material life, so that our vision is correct. We're not being overly drawn into the material energy and all of its seeming opportunities. We don't see it like that. We see that with the correct vision through Shastra and strengthened by devotional service. So through our practice of devotional service, that knowledge that's given in the Shastra and given by the saintly person is strengthened. We get the realization. Krishna will show us exactly how it works when we're engaged in devotional service. So I'll leave it there. And would anyone like to make some comments or add something further?
Well, it's just such a nice verse to end that chapter.
Mm-hmm.
The yoga, what's the second line?
Yoga Vairagya Yuktaya.
Just linking with the Lord through this process, having the intelligence to see, because it's so much an internal thing. Externally, material energy, we're raised to put the barometer on the externals, on how much money you've got, how everything looks. But as we become, as we go along the devotional path, we realise it's so much internal stuff to go, and then we get the realisation that we're part of Krishna, we're a spirit soul, we've come from the Supreme Lord, and that there's so much within that's covered over at the moment, but the potential is unlimited, really, as to what we can uncover inside. The pastimes and the remembrance, and just our whole identity of being part of that can be really uplifting as we go through our life. Because there's no doubt the material energy is going to give us a hard time. So we've got to be internally strong. So this yoga, not to become bewildered by the so-called calamities going on in the world, because there will be calamities that will come and go, and we just have to try and remain fixed and have this pessimistic view, and then we'll be successful. Because if we get bewildered by it, we can understand that with so many stories in the Bhagavatam illustrate that. So we just have to try and do the best we can, and Krishna will make arrangements for us.
Thank you. Yeah.
What were you going to say about the next verse?
Well, the next verse. That's the beginning of the next chapter. That's what I've prepared for. It's a great verse, but that's a whole other Bhagavatam class.
Do you want to just read the translation for us so we can take it away?
Okay, I'll read the translation. So the first verse of the 32nd chapter, Entanglement in Fruitive Activities. The personality of Godhead said, the person who lives in the center of the household life derives material benefits by performing religious rituals, and thereby he fulfills his desire for economic development and sense gratification. Again and again he acts in the same way.
Lifetime after lifetime.
Yes. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he mentions this very famous verse by Prahlad Maharaj. Yes, chewing the chewed. We're simply chewing the chewed again and again. And he talks about the difference between grihastha and grihamedi.
Because we can get the results from our food activities. We do.
Yes, we do.
If you perform religious activities, you can become, quite well situated. But we've got to realise that's not the goal. We don't want to come back and enjoy palatial building with many wives and many children and this whole misidentification. Because as we just heard in this chapter, with death approaching and just the whole breakdown of everything, it's all destroyed in time.
Yes.
So why, using our intelligence, our Buddhi intelligence, we have to realise that it's just a big cycle going around.
Yeah.
So that takes the association of the devotees and the spiritual master. But then you get the reciprocation of Krishna as well, which is really something else that you can't ignore. So that's the best part.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, and in the purport to tomorrow's verse, it talks about affection for family life. Anyways, that's what I was going to talk about, because I always find that topic is very interesting. Because Srila Prabhupada says, anyway, I'm ruining tomorrow's class. Srila Prabhupada says that a grihastha is a person who lives with family, wife, children and relatives but has no attachment for them. And so anyway, There's lots that's said in the Bhagavatam about that topic, and we'll leave that for whoever's giving class tomorrow, because it's a great topic actually, and it's one that I think it's really important to understand properly according to Shastra, because it's not that, and we've seen in the past, and who knows, maybe it still goes on, that can be taken in a very rigid way, that, okay, yes, I have a wife, I don't care about her, the children go away, or vice versa, that the wife is not feeling affectionate toward her family because she's not supposed to, and these kind of things. I think it's very important to understand properly as Shastra explains, otherwise we can have a very warped view of what it means to be a grihasta, and then if our family life is not done properly in Krishna consciousness, then the whole Krishna conscious society is not very functional. It's such a big part that we need to do properly. Anyway, and Queen Kunti, Queen Kunti actually explains that in her prayers in the eighth chapter of the first canto. And in the purports there to 2 verses, Srila Prabhupada describes this really clearly in the purports about attachment to family and what it means to want to cast that off, what that actually means. So, anyway, sorry. I'm going forward.
Connect with them as what they are physically, but more as devotees.
Yes, yeah.
Trying to serve Krishna
By serving the devotees, that's right.
Krishna is like the main being.
Yeah.
But he can be detached and still love.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada.
Externally and internally. See, so externally we can be so, loving and kind and all these things, because we can see with the life of Prabhupada, he was very kind and loving and accommodating and all these sort of things. So we can act like that. And I think we should. We shouldn't be cold.
Yeah, I mean we have to. Krishna wants our heart. He wants our heart to be soft. If we can't soften our heart with devotees, how are we ever going to approach Krishna with feeling, with real feeling, And this is,
So it takes a lot of maturity.
It takes maturity.
To be able to do that in a detached way.
Yeah.
You've got to show the love and the affection and all the concerns for the family. We have to do that.
Yeah.
It's our duty.
Yes. And it's our duty, and it's for our purification also, we have to do our duty properly. But yes, as Jeremy said, and this is Queen Kunti's prayer. She says, she prays to Krishna, cast off my affection for my family members. This is one of her prayers. I don't want this affection for my family members. And yet, Prabhupada explains how she's asking for that bodily relationship, that I'm their mother, for that to go. But the affection based on that they're a devotee, let that stay. Let me have that. Let me embrace that, That's the real affection. And Srila Prabhupada says there that we can't expect to cast off the finer things in life, such as affection for another person. He calls it a finer thing in life. The finer aspect of life is feeling affection. But the affection based on the body, as we know, this is such a temporary connection. Yet the affection that we develop for Krishna's devotees, that is something lasting. So we need to see how this little person who's come as my child is actually Krishna's devotee. And aside from the body, we have a connection with that devotee. And that's something that's easy to say, but we have to work towards that realization.
It's a timing thing also. If you try and do these things prematurely, it just ends up a disaster. So you shouldn't rush into these things of trying to cast it off too early. There's a time. Like the same with the ashrams, The ashrams are there for specific times. So the grihasta ashram is a special time for the affection and all those things. And then later in life, that becomes natural.
It's such a natural progression, isn't it? This is Krishna's whole system, what he's given us. And he's given it like that for a reason. You go through the attachment. It's like you start off life in brahmachari ashram in a detached, and then you become attached. When you're, in a sense, qualified, ready for the attachment. When you can take it on, then you take on the attachment. Through that attachment, we work again towards detachment, vanaprastha, and then to real detachment as sannyasi. So Krishna gives wonderful systems for all of these things. Yeah.
So,
Okay. Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.